This episode of Pool Magazine podcast is proudly sponsored by Ledge Lounger, the leaders in outdoor living and in-pool furniture. Ledge Lounger believes outdoor living inspires life's most meaningful moments, which is exemplified in their new collection, Autograph. Want to learn more about the Autograph collection? Check out what's new and visit our website at ledgeloungers.com.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Pool Magazine podcast. Today I'm chatting with Kirk Bianchi, one of the most widely acclaimed and well-respected pool designers and landscape architects working in the industry today. His work's been featured in numerous publications such as Phoenix Home and Garden, Architectural Digest, Aqua Magazine. He's also currently an instructor for Genesis Education and the principal designer for Bianchi Design, an award-winning pool and outdoor living design firm headquartered in Scottsdale, Arizona. It's an absolute pleasure to have you with us today on the show, Kirk. Thanks for taking the time out to be here with us today.
Definitely. Thanks for having me here.
You know, I listened to a really great interview that you gave back in 2020, and I feel like I got to learn a lot about you, and I know you so much better after listening to you on the Pool Chasers podcast a few years back. That was a really great episode.
Great. Glad you enjoyed that one.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, I think the best way to start today's conversation and really an appropriate starting point would be if we just took a few moments to give our listeners a little bit of a bio and backstory about who you are, what your firm's all about, and how you got started designing pools and custom backyards.
Right. Well, my background, if we can go back far enough, was I had a great introduction in high school, 4 years altogether, every day for 4 years, a 3-hour class the whole time of architectural drafting. Thanks, Mr. Palm. And everything else we did in high school was just extra, because that's pretty much why I got up in the morning. It was just to go have fun in the architectural drawing class. We had statewide competitions and for money, made it a good time. And it was just a great intensive program, right? By the time I went to ASU for architecture, had already had a chance to work at some residential architecture firms back where I grew up in Michigan, and had a taste for work in that profession, and it gave us a head start. A couple peers of mine, one of my friends is with me here in Arizona and is a residential architect, but I got the nudge to move towards landscape and pool design. There was a chance to go to Japan for a month in the summer, where I was with my father on a trip. While he was working, I was out roaming around and checking out Japan, and was really blown away by their artistry. I mean, literally the way everybody, from the taxi cab driver to the guy preparing your meal. And of course, the more iconic imagery you think of Japan with the gardens. I mean, it was an immersive experience in visual arts from everybody, from the top down and the bottom up. It was really awesome. And I was really blown away by their Japanese gardens and the way they would have indoor, outdoor living. The way they would blend the architecture with nature is really just infused in the Japanese culture. It's part of their way of life. I mean, in a city, high density population, they're all about carving these little places to reflect and be in nature, even in these tiny little courtyards and these little Zen gardens. And it was really interesting and impactful. And I never seen that growing up in Michigan, where everything's pork chops and applesauce. Nevertheless, when I got to ASU, I had taken the exam that said, what are you going to be when you grow up? And it said landscape architect. And I was kind of taken aback, because I thought that was a downstream profession that, I wanted to be more in the front and shape the whole thing, do architecture, especially residential. And it was kind of a surprise. They thought of landscape architecture was more fitting to, my skills or natural gifting or talents or whatever you wanted to call it. And I kind of dismissed it at the time. But later I read an article about Ted Miller, professional fisherman turned pool designer, in a business journal while I was at an accountant's office. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. And 2 weeks later, I had to rummage through the recycle bin at the Ritz-Carlton where I was working to find that article, because it kept haunting me. And I found it, and I called him and I said, it sounds like you're having fun. I'm a burned out architecture student, but tell me about what you're doing. And he laughed and he says, well, you get to see the fruits of your labor in 6 months and do a high impact thing for the end user, not a committee or the city or a developer. You're actually benefiting the people enjoying what you're doing for them. And 6 months later or a year later, you're done and you're moving on to another project. So it's fun, it's inspiring, and it's diverse, and you're not stuck at a desk. All of those things were intriguing to me. And the next day I was on an excavation crew trimming the walls down in a hole. I was employed the following day with the pool company, and they did in-house excavation and boulder setting and exposed aggregate concrete was some of their specialties. But by night, I would get to go out and work with the owner on his client meetings. I noticed he had a chicken scratch drawing on a napkin that he was going to show a client. And I stayed late that first day and I did a colored marker and pencil rendering like I had done since my freshman year in high school, and whipped out a beautiful drawing for him to share with his client. He's like, well, heck, you should just go with me. All right, I'm in. And so I got to do construction by day and sales and design by evenings and worked it from both ends at the same time. And that was a great crash course in the world of pool design and client interactions, and actually seeing if I draw this, and how does the plumber receive it? Does he understand what I'm doing? Instant feedback and meeting with the trades, because by the end of that experience, I was the superintendent for my own projects. Meet the client, do the design, price the job, and be the superintendent of your own project. Schedule the job with the trades. I mean, I was kind of like the company for the client. I was the interface for the whole experience. So it was a nice model. And I enjoyed that. So I did that for 6 years, 3 years there and 3 years at a different company in the same structure. And rather than becoming a contractor, my instinct was design. That was my calling. And I perceived that that's what was lacking in the industry. I had come to know really good contractors, but they weren't taking kind of a holistic approach to the backyards. And that was my art and love and passion. And so I'm just going to go on my own as design, and then I'll introduce clients to the contractors that I know. And it's a full-time job being a contractor. Your whole day is spent in the nuts and bolts of things, building stuff, the how, and I'm more of the why. So that's kind of how I got into it all. From 1991, and by 2000, I was on my own, and I've been doing it on my own in that capacity ever since.
I definitely understand the left brain, right brain aspect of building a pool, and people can immediately kind of identify the pools that you've designed. I mean, you kind of have your own unique style. When I look at your portfolio, I'm like, oh, that's a Kirk Bianchi pool,
Mm-hmm.
But surely, I mean, some people have told you before, your style has a really unique Japanese influence on the pools that you design. I mean, what are some of the key principles or philosophies that kind of guide your approach?
Yeah, it was funny. I was with Rick Chafee the other day, and he says, Bianchi's got a tree fetish. I thought that was really funny. And I was pondering that. It's true. I mean, why? Well, I was in Japan, and of course, they're iconic. They got the Japanese pine or the Japanese maple that's kind of often the star in their show of their Japanese gardens. They're very bonsai, twisted focal elements in their gardens. And I think that just stuck with me. So that is I actually made it my logo. I actually took a Japanese maple bonsai and made it my logo and reflected it in a pool and graphically reduced that to a black and white image. And because I was always explaining to people, we're going to take this tree and we're going to use the pool as a mirror. So instead of waving my hands, I just made it my logo and, didn't have to talk about it anymore. I just pointed my business card. And it became my theme, your overarching principle from the beginning, and it's really a driving element. I love taking things that you just drive by every day and take for granted. And by putting a mirror to it and reflecting it and lighting it, you realize, wow, that looks awesome. But if you had just put it in a normal context without the mirror and without the lighting, you take it for granted. There's so much awesome stuff around us every day. We just don't stop and look and go, wow, that's kind of a beautiful structure or shape or form, because we're too busy, we're too distracted. And so it's kind of fun when you can take ordinary things, arrange them a certain way, and put a mirror on it and light it, and it stops people in their tracks, and they really just appreciate what's been in front of them all along, and makes them stop and slow down and smell the roses. That's kind of a fun thing to do. And so the principles of, design that I like is, I really design the yard first, the background first, the garden first. It's more about the backdrop. And I think that's, if you could change one thing in the industry, it's pools are notoriously designed around the foreground and the middle ground. When you look in a scene, Every camera angle has a foreground, middle ground, background. And most pool imagery, if you pull it off the web, even high dollar projects, it's often a neglected element as the background. And you have an interesting foreground, perhaps, but you're left with something in the background that you didn't really want to look at, and it's messing up the shot. So I really like designing the background and then using the pool as a mirror to reflect that. I think that formula is kind of what's missing. If you could change that one thing in the industry, would be a huge factor.
Yeah, I see that in a lot of your work, kind of like a seamless transition from indoor to outdoor spaces where the pool doesn't look like it's tacked on. It kind of looks like it's supposed to be there, like it belongs there. That's kind of what separates your work from a lot of the other designs that I see out there. You see people going for over the top luxury resort style pools that don't necessarily complement the overall aesthetic of the home, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a real disconnect. A lot of times you'll see, a home of a certain structure and orderly arrangement, and then there's this backyard that looks like a theme park, and it has no organizational quality that relates back to the house whatsoever. It's a total disconnect. You see this constantly. And how many bells and whistles can we cram into our backyard? And it's overkill. It's just unrestrained discord, if you will. It's not harmonious at all. And a lot of times you have these beautiful homes with this magnificent geometry and sculptural qualities, and the backyard is just something else altogether. It's a real travesty. I'm going to say the word. It's awful. I just cringe, and I'm like, why? How'd that happen? It's kind of my mission in life is one client at a time, save them from that, show them what's possible. But I've really been enjoying teaching and being a mentor one-on-one through Genesis. And whenever I can help somebody to just help them along, it's been a real pleasure to do that. So I'd like to do more of that.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, this design aesthetic that you have, I mean, in the Southwest market where you primarily design, it's known for its unique climate and that desert landscape. How does the local environment where you work influence your design choices and materials, and what challenges and opportunities does it present for you as a designer?
Well, we're definitely spoiled in the Southwest. We don't have the freeze thaw concerns of materials, and that it opens up us a lot of opportunities and things you can overcome in freeze thaw environments. But just we have a little more latitude. Our soils are really pretty awesome. They're not, there's some areas in town here in Phoenix where they're expansive, but we have pretty stable soils. So a lot of the crazy things that people encounter in other parts of the country, we have that advantage. But visually, we have just iconic scenery as a background a lot of times with mountains and rugged boulders or vistas that we don't have. But the plant material here is very sculptural, and it just makes opportunity to have a really amazing sculptural planted background. In other parts of the country, things are more shrubs and leafy and soft foliage and not as structural. So you might have to create interest. We have a lot more geometrically dynamic plant material here that makes that maybe a little easier to create a really cool background to a pool. But those are some of the things we have in the Southwest that we do enjoy. I like to reinvent those themes in other parts of the country as I work with people in other areas of the world. It's like, okay, well, we don't have yucca rostratas here and like we do in the desert, but what plants in your region have the same structure? Let's look for those and use them as a focal point, Regionally, we have a lot of travertines and things that are easily accessible from the Southwest of Mexico, and sandstones and Cantera stones and things that in a freeze thaw environment might absorb water and not be good, right? Those are to our advantage in the Southwest. But I sure do covet some of the woods and the bluestones that you see in other parts of the country. You wish you could do those here in the desert. The wood doesn't last here, but you see it in the Northwest and Australia. And so we each have our regional advantages and aesthetics that they're familiar to us. And then when someone else looks elsewhere in the country, man, I wish we could do that in Arizona.
Right.
So while we have our own, there's other parts of the country that has beautiful materials that, I wish we could use it here in Arizona. It just doesn't go.
I know you've gotten numerous awards over the years for your designs. One of them that we're going to be highlighting in our magazine, it definitely looks like an award winner for sure. It's a pool remodel. It just looks like night and day from the original pool that was there and what was attempted to what the end result looks like now. And I'd like to discuss that project a little bit with you.
Sure.
I mean, it's hard to envision what this pool looks like on a podcast, but basically we were talking about a vanishing edge pool with a spa attached to it overlooking a pond. And what you've really created here, it goes back to that point that I was making, is like a seamless transition in the outdoor living environment where the pool looks like it was always part of the original property and is a very classy upgrade in terms of the outdoor living experience, what you've created. Now, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, the site was challenging in that the pool's only 15 feet deep front to back, but it's about pushing 90 feet in length. And the back edge is just one straight line that follows the edge of the property. It's a raised site condition. So there's a retaining wall that drops off, and there's a landscaped area and then a pond beyond it. So it's just a linear line. It's the shape of a bow, it's a string that's your vanishing edge, back edge, but then the front edge is a sweeping arc that allows you to traverse the yard from left to right down that almost 90 feet long. And the curve allows you to navigate from left to right in such a narrow space, because the depth of the yard was so shallow, but it was so wide. And the reason for that, well, why did you feel the need to fill the entire property line? Because you could, but also because you're going to be at the extreme far left and you're going to be at the extreme far right, not just the middle when you walk out. So whenever you get to the far right side of the yard where the chaise loungers are, you're looking down this long axis. And it was just a shame to have a pool that was there originally was probably 25 feet wide that only addressed the center line view. And when you got anywhere else in the yard, you didn't even know the pool was there because it was just a little blip on the horizon. So the length of the pool was driven by, well, I'm going to be to the extreme far right, and I want to be able to enjoy the vanishing edge from that vantage point and look across the water to the east and see the sunrise. And then when I'm in the far east side of the yard on the left, I want to look back and, there's these magnificent eucalyptus trees that are right off the back edge of the pool. How we got to capture that in the reflection, of course. We can't just do a blunt little blip of vanishing edge and it doesn't capture the breadth of the now you're looking at the sunset through the tree that's there. The width of the pool had to capture the breadth of the space from that angle, which is an extreme viewing angle to the far left. So it just kind of made sense. You got to span the whole property line because of the viewing angles. Where are you going to appreciate this from? And so that's how the shape came to be. Just fill the back edge of the property line and then create a sweeping arc in the front. And then the extreme ends of the pool became sun shelves because it's a real acute corner. How are you going to swim in that? So the main body of the pool is really the middle third, and then the extreme ends are sun shelves and just shallow. The spa actually became an add-on. They said, we want to add a spa after the design was done. And I'm like, I don't want to mess up this pristine geometry. Where are you going to put this element? And so we had this space to just hide it within the overall geometry of the pool, and we raised it a 1/4 inch. That way the cold water of the pool isn't getting into the hot spot, but visually when you're not using it, it's just one plane of glass, and you haven't added a new geometric element to the shape that we already had.
It's so clean. I mean, it's barely perceptible that the spa is there. You could just barely see the indentation where it breaks the water line.
Yeah.
And it's just gorgeous. You're a great storyteller, by the way, Kirk, because I'm looking at the photo and I'm picturing myself as the homeowner. I'm out there in the morning, sitting in my spa, enjoying a cup of coffee, looking across the meadow. What is that? A golf course community this pool is built near?
It is. It's a great lot. The golf course wraps around this property on almost like three sides. The lot injects itself into the golf course, and the golf course wraps around you on three sides. Most golf course lots, you just got the span, across the back. This one actually wraps around you. And so they're like living in a park that they don't have to maintain. In fact, part of the design on this one was, the pool fence had, first the old pool was just a blip of vanishing edge, but then the pool fence connected to the edge of the vanishing edge. So we removed about 40 or 50 feet at least of pool fence that didn't have to be there, because the pool barrier was met by the out of ground grade change on the exterior. So we peeled back a lot of pool fence, and we actually built up the wall like 12 inches in some areas because it was just shy of meeting pool code. So we peeled back as much fence as we could. And now when you're sitting at the living area and fire pit, you used to be caged in. You couldn't even enjoy the golf course because you had a cage around you. We peeled that away and used a planter to, not need a railing, because we had a planter between the living area and the drop off. And so we just really wanted them to feel like they were immersed in their park like setting of the golf course without being enclosed and caged.
You cleaned up the view considerably with the landscaping I see there. I mean, a lot of this wasn't just about the pool itself, but I feel like it was about making the outdoor living environment more accessible to the homeowner and making it feel like they had more space in their backyard.
Yeah, we've basically doubled their living area. They live outside and entertain outside. The highlight of this project, it was through COVID, and took forever to build with the delays, and they had a rehearsal dinner. We got the pool full of water a week before their dinner, and they had like 70 people there. That was the crescendo of their, the highlight of their experience in constructing this, was this moment of celebration with their family. And the client was texting me, "Oh my gosh, these people won't stop. They're embarrassing me."
That's a good problem to have.
Yeah, I was like, it's almost becoming embarrassing to keep, commenting on how ridiculously amazing this is. That was a good moment. It made it all worthwhile.
A lot of things happened during COVID, but one thing's for sure. I mean, outdoor living spaces have become increasingly more popular in recent years. I mean, we got a return to spending time in the backyard with family and friends. I mean,
Yes.
what do you believe are the current trends in pool and outdoor living design? And what do you see coming down the road?
Well, and I hope to be part of this, is just creating beautiful settings that are integrated with landscape and lighting. Of necessity, we've all become specialists in our particular lane, but that's been counterproductive to the actual fulfillment of what we're actually doing. If my first employer was highly pool centric, and that was their craft. And there was one time he said to me, "It's very nice of you to design all of these other amenities in the yard in your drawings, but we don't build those things. You're kind of just giving that away and taking a lot of time and energy to do that. Do yourself a favor and maybe streamline your process and just focus on what we do. And, you'll make more money, we'll make more money, and you'll, quit being a martyr." And I just couldn't, I was taken aback. How do you get to a design of a pool without designing the other amenities? My sequence was design the yard first and then the pools last. And it was obvious to me to do that. No one told me to do that. But when you're a pool centric company and you want to be really good at just building pools, well, that's a business model. It's a whole nother discipline to be a landscape company, and a whole other area of knowledge and expertise. And do you even want to take on that role? I overcame that later because because I went freelance. I wasn't stuck at a company. I'm a freelance designer. Now I was a team builder. I could bring in a landscape contractor who was also a designer, and I could bring in a pool builder, and then I could bring in a general contractor. And now I'm bringing in Jan Lennox Moyer, who's a lighting designer. And I think you need all four of those quadrants to work really well together, because sometimes the house is terrible and you got to tear off the back of the house,
Yeah.
And if you notice this and you're just a pool guy, I got to just stay in my lane, it's not my business, then you're not delivering the potential end product. So I guess in a roundabout way, what I'm saying is I'm hoping people, if they're not going to expand their business to tackle these other disciplines because they don't want to go too far afield of what they're good at or what they love, then I hope the change is that you partner with other people if you haven't done that already. And instead of saying landscape by others on your plan, have someone that goes with you to present the design as a cohesive project. Because the customers are going to call you first because they know, I've got heavy equipment in my backyard. I'm tearing up my space. It doesn't make sense to call a landscape designer or a landscape contractor or a landscape architect. They kind of go straight to a pool contractor, most people. But then that person has too much free reign. They take over the space and they don't leave room in the sandbox for the other people to play. And that's then the demise. That's why our industry looks the way it does. You look at all these pool images and it looks like the pool guy had a good time and he didn't leave room for anybody else.
Right.
And that is the problem, is we're not creating a cohesive finished environment, and one person is going in and dominating the whole space and not allowing for the other elements to cohesively fit together.
you come in as a designer, Kirk, right? I mean, you bring your
Yeah.
A team together, more or
Yes.
less, so to speak. So collaboration is a big part of what you do in the world of design.
Right. Really, I that's how I work because I'm not a person who's just at a pool company and we only do pools. That's where I started in the world. But because I went on my own as a designer who builds the team, I'm able to bring in other, I do that on almost every project. The one that's gotten a lot of press recently was the NAMI residence with the curved board form concrete walls. And their back patio was terribly shallow. You couldn't exist underneath it. It was worthless. It had columns that were in the way, and the back of their house had no real in and out. They had one little door that would swing in and out, and they had big windows, but there was no way to get from the inside to the out except constantly having to go through this one door. It was a swinging door. It wasn't a slider, so you couldn't leave it open. It would always shut behind you. And, the design that I did was comprehensive. I mean, there was a third of the project was tearing off the back of the house, rebuilding the roof structure and converting that to a big glass sliding wall. It was an integral part of enjoying the outdoor experience. If I'd only designed the backyard and left that the way it was, it wouldn't have been nearly what it became. There's some projects where the pool is only 20% of the scope, and we ended up remodeling the whole house exterior as a refresh and knocking down balconies and stairways that were imposing into the space that didn't belong there and reconfiguring them so that the pool could go where it needed to be and should have been from the beginning. So I would invite my peers to try to be as cross-disciplinary as possible to build a team of other people and to recognize when they're in a site for the first time, if the project requires, work from other disciplines, let the customer know the big picture here. Maybe you're the first person there and they've called you and they're only starting with you. And you say, you know what, I've got a vision for your property that's bigger than just giving you a new pool. We would be not delivering what's possible here. And what I do is I do the whole conceptual design and I tell them, hey, we're going to reconfigure this house and I want to show you what's possible. And when it comes time to do figures, I'm going to invite in these different trades to bring this to pass for you. And, they're excited about that. It's not just the pool that's going to get remodeled. It all has to work together. So that's kind of my invitation to my peers is if they're not already doing that, build a team around you of other disciplines.
Absolutely. So we'll switch gears a minute. What I'd like to talk about is outdoor living spaces and how they can serve various purposes. I mean, you touched on that a minute ago yourself. I mean, from relaxation to entertainment, how do you tailor your designs to kind of meet the specific needs and preferences of your clients?
Yeah, it's part of my interview process. There are clients that have come to realize that they just want a beautiful setting, and the functionality that they might ask for sometimes can be secondary to that. For instance, if someone asks me for water slides and lazy rivers, I haven't attracted a lot of those clients because all of my imagery is very artistic and beautiful. And so I tend to attract clients that are all about, yeah, I want it to be functional, but it's got to look good. And that's really what I like to deliver. Once upon a time, I had a really tight yard up on a hillside and it had a really classic design. And the builder called me in a rush. The client wants a lazy river and something to entertain his grandkids. And I said, you've got a great design here and you're behind the 8 ball on a hillside and you're going to have to resubmit. And frankly, a lazy river does not fit on your property. If they want a theme park for their grandkids, they should really, take them down to the aquatic center that's 2 miles away and do something classy and elegant on your property. And the builders, I said, that's what you need to tell your client. Because I'm not your guy. I'm not going to take your property and convert it into a theme park. And you really don't have the room. So sometimes you have to be bold enough to help people realize that they're asking for things that don't fit into their theme. And sometimes they want it all. And wait, you're telling me no? Yeah, it doesn't go. You're not wearing that. You're not going out in that, are you?
Right.
You're going to a wedding in the Northeast. It's not the same as what you'd wear to a wedding in the Caribbean on the beach. They're both weddings, but what you wear to one isn't what you wear to the other. So stylistically, your pool and your environment has to match and be cohesive. So that's kind of a driving conversation when I'm talking to clients is the functionality has to fit within an overall theme aesthetically and work. So some of those functions that are easier to integrate is, some people are lap swimmers. I ask them, are you a flip turn kind of lap swimmer? Do you need flat ends and a long swim lane, or are you just a putter around and swim as far as you can and stop and change directions, kind of a lap swimmer? Can we put sun shelves and benches at the end of your pool, or do we need to keep a true lap lane? And people shake out into different categories of lap swimmers.
Right.
That's a defining element. Are you heating the pool? Do you need a pool cover? Okay, then you're getting a rectangle. So, there's a few functional things that are very defining about the geometry that you have to ask early on. Those
You
hurdles.
bring your knowledge and your expertise to it, right? So, I mean, what are some of those biggest misconceptions or myths that you kind of have to dispel when you're reining these people in?
I think one of the things that I find myself telling clients a lot is, as I'm showing them my work that they find appealing, I'm pointing out why they like it. And I'm showing them that we're putting the landscape on a higher pedestal than maybe they've been realizing the significance of. And therefore, if you want a pool that's too big for your space, you're going to hack and slash at the planting area that we have to retain. So there is sometimes a tug of war that I have to wrestle for, is show people that, if we make your pool too big, you're going to eat away at the landscape area. And that's what you're really looking at from inside. And so I have to really hold my ground. Like we cannot make your pool too big for the space. We have to keep the landscape as a priority. And well, it's not important to me. Oh, it will be. Let me show you, and so that is a conversation I have frequently. This all has to work together. Proportion is really the theme here. Don't make something disproportionately inappropriate for the space. And I think, and that's a conversation that I have to teach people on a lot, so that they're in the sweet spot where everything fits together. Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, you've been doing this a long time. What do you find most rewarding still about your work as a pool and outdoor living designer, and what keeps you motivated and passionate about it, even after all these years?
I think people are still blown away by the aesthetics and what was possible. It's a long journey. You get the concept, they've seen the renderings, and then you go through the long construction process, and I tell them it's going to look like World War I until like the last 10% of the project. And then all of a sudden it's going to come together and they're going to be shocked. And even though you've told them, they get weary of the process, and the rewarding time is when it finally starts coming to fruition and they're blown away. Even though you've prepared them and they've seen renderings, and it finally comes true and they see the fruits of their efforts, and they're so ecstatic about the end result that they pinch themselves and they're like, I had no idea this was possible. That level of, like that wedding party I described, where people were just, they wouldn't stop gushing about the experience of being in this yard, that heightened sense of beauty, and it takes their breath away. That's really rewarding. We're all in a rat race, and we walk by beautiful stuff all the time, and we don't stop to take in. We're always in a hurry, and we just move on to the next day. So I really like to stop people in their tracks and have them take a time out and just go, wow, that was special. That was a beautiful place. Remember that? Yeah, that was gorgeous. Wow. So that moment is so encouraging, and because it's kind of how I see the world all the time, and a lot of other folks don't, and I have to be tenacious about it. And then all of a sudden it comes to fruition. Oh, I get it. Oh, that's amazing. Now I know why you were such a stickler for all of those things, and why you were such a pain in the butt, why you kept holding the line. We got to do this. You're going to want this. Just trust me. And when they finally do, and it comes together, and they get it and they see it and they have it, then they don't stop, and then they're just elated. So it's that getting them over the finish line gives me a big boost to go on and do it again for the next person.
Well, I know a lot of people learn from you, Kirk. I was talking to Andy Keener the other day, and he said he just took your class. You want to talk a little bit about your class that you're teaching at Genesis, what you're doing right now?
Yeah, it's a really fun experience. I've done, I think, 6 of them now, some virtual, some live. And I was really flattered to be given the opportunity. They just gave me the floor and build a 2-day class around your method, how you approach a space. And I kind of broke it down into my 12 steps. It's a 12-step program. to how do you approach a space, and it's my sequence that I go through. And if I get stuck, I often go back and like, all right, well, I follow my own structure. If I get stuck in a design, I have to just go through it in this order. If this, then that, and it shakes out the other end. Okay, well, then here it is. It's a process of elimination. It's not an arbitrary process and experience where you're just poking at it and having to, I don't know, what do you think? I don't know. No, there's a very clear, defined process. Well, if this is true, then this must follow. And it's really helpful to go through that because, one, it helps you not just muddle through, and you create something meaningful out the other end. It's solid and it's reasoned and it makes sense. And then it helps you articulate that to the client in a significant way. Now they're at peace because they don't feel like they're vacillating between 5 different options that were all equal and they can't decide. You've helped them prioritize and triage for them how they have to sort it out. And now they're settled and confident and at peace because, all right, that's it. It can't be anything else. Of course that is. It's self-evident. That's fun. But it also helps prevent revisions because they saw the process and now they're very disinclined to pull the thread on the sweater and unravel the tapestry that you've created for them because they know now why everything is where it is. They're not going to turn it inside out and flip it upside down. And, well, what if we move this over here? They don't do that because now they know why everything is where it is. They respect your design because you shared with them the process. So I really enjoy giving people that structure to work within and then communicate to the clients. So it gives you an authority and a conviction about your design that you maybe before were just tinkering with and hoping they would like it, and then they're not sure. And then it's a leadership posture, and it helps get you through to a finished product more efficiently and in a beautiful way.
Before we wrap our conversation, there's one last thing that I would like to touch base with you on, and that's whether you could share any insights into your own creative process. I mean, how do you begin conceptualizing a new project, and what steps do you take to kind of turn the client's vision into a reality?
It's the outside in approach instead of the inside out approach. The industry is geared to the inside out. You have a blank canvas, you drop in the pool, you put the deck around it, fit in a few structures, and the leftover space is where the plants go. And that usually results in what you see everywhere. And so by doing an outside in approach, you start with the background layer around the perimeter. Is there anything unsightly we don't want to see? Yeah, okay, you got to put a tree there or something to block it that's visual. Oh, we got a view here. Okay, so you got to leave that open. So you work your way around the outside perimeter first, and then you got to land your eye candy around the yard. Sculptures, art pieces, landscape groupings of whether it's trees or sculptural plant material that you're going to view from inside the house looking out a window. Land those in the yard. It tells you where the pool isn't going because you've already claimed the space for something from inside out. A lot of times I'll have elements on my plan. Here's a spa. I know the spa is going to go here. I know an art piece is going here. They're not connected yet because they're just floating apparently, but maybe they're from a view corridor from a certain window. I want to see this composition. I'm designing through the lens of a camera. I'm in the space looking through and across, and I'm always looking at foreground, middle ground, and background. If you're not able to visualize your space, these new tools with the 3D really make that helpful. Keep checking your work in the 3D as you're looking through windows and from certain vantage points, and composing it like you would a photograph or a painting, foreground, middle ground, background. So those are the tricks. You got to design through the lens of a camera like it's a canvas, and like you have 5 or 6 snapshots of your yard. If you're going to photograph this project when you're done, where are you going to stand? You kind of know that in advance. All right, compose the scene from each of those angles and make sure it works. Of course, it has to work in plan view. That's your traffic flow and everything. But I think that's the disconnect that maybe most folks aren't doing. To be able to see the world in 3D as you're drawing in 2D has been a difficult thing. But now we have with the 3D software that can help us. So it's that posture and that mode that I try to show people.
I love it, Kirk. I mean, the outside in approach. Kirk, thanks so much for taking time out to be on the show today. I really enjoyed hearing some of your insights and learning a little bit more about your process.
Been a pleasure.
That's all the time we have left today. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and we'll catch you next time on another episode of Pool Magazine Podcast.
This episode of Pool Magazine Podcast is proudly sponsored by Ledge Lounger, the leaders in outdoor living and in-pool furniture. Ledge Lounger believes outdoor living inspires life's most meaningful moments, which is exemplified in their new collection, Autograph. Want to learn more about the Autograph collection? Check out what's new and visit our website at ledgeloungers.com.